Hello, everybody. We're back for another episode of Incessantly Seeking. Today, I have Brian McKnight Jr. to talk to us about music and how that interferes with all of our relationships. Thanks for being here, Brian.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, of course, I'm super excited for this chat because music plays such a huge part in my life. And I have had those moments where I felt like I wish there was a soundtrack happening as I'm walking down the street.
Oh yeah.
But we all have that like song that brings you back to a moment in time, to a relationship, to I don't know, a childhood memory. So let's talk about how did you start working with music?
Wow. My introduction into music was something I really was born into. Both sides of my family are full of musicians, full of singers, full of artists, period. Some with a lot of success in it and some that are just really good that didn't necessarily want to be stars. So they have all this incredible musical talent and they just live, these everyday, not ordinary lives, but just not, they didn't quite pursue that. My mom and dad in particular, obviously my dad, Brian McKnight, R&B crooner, legend, singer, songwriter, took it the furthest. But then my mother as well, Julie McKnight, is a superstar in her own right as well in the house and electronic music side of things. So I really got it honest from my family. I, as a songwriter and producer, you figure I've had a studio quite literally in my bedroom since I was maybe 7 years old, 7, 8, 9. So from then until now, that's been my life. I've really been fortunate to have my own success that's allowed me to only necessarily have to make music. I wake up and I get to just write songs and make songs every day. And I couldn't be more thankful that this is my job, that this is what I get to do. This is how I can help other people. Because that's essentially what music really is for me, too, man. I believe it's medicine. I genuinely believe it heals. I mean, I think in some cases it's actually scientifically proven to be healing. So, um, for me, I know God put me in this position to do exactly what I'm doing because it's my favorite thing to do. I love making music, and I'll never stop. I'll never stop doing it.
I love that. And I agree with you. Like music is very therapeutical. I feel like we all been in those like heart breakup moments where we put up that really sad song and we just
Oh
cry
yeah,
and like, have that moment of feeling understood. I think
oh
music
yeah,
really does that for us. And, I think no one can contest that like Taylor Swift has been like on the forefront of making therapy music for herself.
oh my God, oh without a
And then
doubt,
right, Olivia Rodrigo with that song about the license, that everybody kind of
yeah,
felt like really they felt understood and seen. So yeah, I think
oh
it's
yeah,
really a huge service to other people to really create songs that helps us understand how we feel in a
yes.
particular moment. But how do you get your inspiration?
I am also fortunate in the sense that I'm inspired by everything around me. I am an avid, almost obsessive people watcher and human studier that even as the Scorpio in me does tend to be a lot more introverted, I love being around people. I love hearing people's stories. I love meeting new people. I'm that stranger that you'll walk past that I'm going to talk to you. If I see you smiling, I'm gonna definitely gonna talk to you. But even the times where I get a sense that people may not have been spoken to that day, or, just a simple hello sometimes even can spark a moment that for me can turn into 10 songs and not just one. I am truly, truly a fan of human interaction, and I think that is something that's aided me even since I was really, really young in the beginning and cultivating my songwriting skills really stemmed from my friends. I didn't grow up writing about me personally until I was later in high school and I did go through that first breakup. And then it was like, oh, here's this whole new, laundry list of things and feelings I can talk about. That's not just, these everyday things I've been writing about. But as I've grown, you figure I just turned 34. So I've been consciously writing songs for at least 20 years. And they're all stories. I am a storyteller. And I'm so inspired by love in all shapes and sizes on both sides of the spectrum because I've experienced it all. And even now, as a father, that, put a whole nother layer of topics I can speak on as a writer. And that's really where I've been maybe this last year and a half to 2 years as I've gone away from just writing love songs and just, because it's easy for me to do. I've got thousands of them. And then I really challenged myself this last 2 years to start stepping into some other territories, cultural things, current events, things that speak to me that are even not necessarily music topics. Those songs have begun to pour in now too, which has opened up another level of inspiration in the sense of now I'm learning. I'm just learning again. I'm learning new things. I'm learning about other cultures. I'm learning about stuff that's going on in the world that you just wouldn't have years ago because we didn't have the technology. We didn't have this way of giving and receiving information that we do now. And I am like a human computer. I download these things and I turn them into art somehow. I really compare the way that I make music to painting, because all my canvases are blank all the time, and I just you never know what format or what medium you're going to get, but they'll always have a sense of me trying to understand us as humans here, me trying to understand why we go through this heartbreak, me trying to understand why we feel elated about some things, just trying to discover new ways to say old things as well is something that keeps me going too, because it's all been said and done. I've never been a believer in the saying that there's nothing new under the sun, because I somehow manage to create new things all the time. But there is that sense of we all are trying to essentially get to the same destination of just figuring out who we are, what makes us tick, and what the people we love most, what they need, how they feel. So that's why a lot of my writing really comes from a family standpoint, relationships, of course. But my general theme in my writing and my music has seemed to be just giving more love. Giving and receiving more love is essentially, all it all comes down to. So from
Um,
that, I'm constantly inspired.
and I love that. And just to attest to the truth of you, like this is how we met. We were at a bar
Yeah,
in Silver Lake. I
right.
was it was downpour. It was a really rainy night, and I had a meeting
That's
across the
right.
street, and I wasn't ready to go home. And I was like, what's this bar? So I stepped into this, like it felt like a speakeasy in New York City.
Yeah,
And he has a beautiful jazz program, and that's how we met. Brian came up to me, he's like, "Hey, are you
yeah.
here alone? Let's hang." Brought me
Right.
over to like the table, and I met a bunch of all
Yeah.
these people. And that was probably one of the best music nights I've had in LA. It was just
Oh,
amazing
awesome.
act after amazing act. I was like, "What is this place?" So that was really a
Awesome.
cool experience. And the way you do that with music, and try to understand people, I feel like this podcast has been for me a way to like really get into like people's stories, and it's been lovely. I feel like I've been falling in love with people over and over again as I hear these life
Wow.
stories. But I would love to talk a little bit more about what it was like becoming a father. Like the moment that
Yeah.
did you feel like a father when you were like hand over a baby, or was it a feeling that came sooner? I'm fascinated by that. I don't have kids
Yeah.
yet, and I feel like, especially for men, it's such a different experience because as a woman, a lot of the times you get to carry a baby, a lot of the times you don't. Like things are changing now. But
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
interesting experience that I think really deepens you probably as a human being. So I love to hear more about that.
Man, becoming a dad for me, I mean, it changed my life. You hear people say this, but it really changed and continues to change my life. My oldest two, I've got a 9-year-old son and I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and then I've got an 18-month-old now. So with my first two, especially with my son, my firstborn, I didn't get the opportunity to be there as often as I would like to be for those first few formidable years of his life. So as much as I felt like a father. I knew I don't know. I was still in that limbo phase. You know, I was 23. I was cleaning my life up. I was trying to make myself, you know, get myself into a position where I could even become a good dad. And I'm thankful for that time now because it was through that work that you know that I mean, it took a long time for me to get myself to a place to where I felt I was worthy to be my kid's dad, because I've always wanted to be an incredible father. And you know, things happen. Life happens. It happened much sooner than I would have thought it would. Me and my oldest two kids' mom aren't together, and we weren't ever really together. So that dynamic, you know, was definitely something that needed to work through, and it took some time. But it was that work that I dedicated myself to do just for myself as an individual that has led into every other facet of my life. The discipline, the level of awareness that I have now for the people around me, their feelings, the empathy I have for other people's situations, their lives, has all made me more patient with my children, has allowed me to be a much better communicator with my children. You know, like, I don't lie to my kids about anything. I am very open and very upfront and honest about me and myself and my life, about where I'm at. Um, because I truly, in my heart, genuinely believe that there's really nothing on earth like being a dad, you know. And with everything that I've gone through with my dad, has even still, I don't know, lit this fire in me to not only be an incredible dad myself and continuing to always be there for my children no matter what, but to also begin to have more conversations like this, to where I can begin to kind of answer a lot of the questions I feel most young parents have about, you know, co-parenting, about, you know, just all the trials and tribulations that you will face becoming a new parent when you're not ready, and when you haven't necessarily prepared for that to be the case, and then boom, you got three kids. So being a dad for me has been everything. Every decision I make, every move I make, I consider them first. Will they see this? How would they feel about this if they see this now or later? You know, how can I explain my actions to them if it's something that even I know they probably, you know, it's just, there's a level of awareness now that I have about the things that I do that I did not have before they came, you know. And especially now with my youngest one, who I really have now finally gotten to have those early moments with, being there when she was born, chest to chest, you know, that skin to skin, those moments are real. And I go back and forth now with being incredibly hard on myself for missing out on those moments with my oldest children, with now experiencing what it's like with my youngest one. So that's where I'm at now as a dad, trying to figure out how to not beat myself up and not feel so bad for lost time, and just focus on the time that I can spend with them and do nothing but give them as much love that I can as possible. As a role model, as a man, even for my daughters, you know, I think it's imperative for them to see their dad be a good man, a good, honest man, um, which I also believe, you know, generations before mine, they had a very limited view of what that was. And society had given, especially men, and double especially young Black men, this like bullet point set list of things that what being a good man was. You know, get a husband, you get a job, or, you know, it's just, when for me, it really, I've had the most unorthodox push into all of this, you know, my career, fatherhood, everything. So it's kind of put me in this accelerated position to teach now, to kind of help my peers not go through the things that I went through. And essentially not, you know, make sure my kids never go through what I went through either. Which for me stems from just every day I wake up and try to be the best person I can be, the most genuine, generous, and kind person I can be. Because if you start with that foundation, chances are you'll turn out pretty good. So that's, you know, what fatherhood has done for me.
Do
My
you feel
long-winded version.
No, I love it. I mean, I'm sure it's not an easy summary of all
Yeah.
those feelings that encompass something that is forever changing. But do you feel like that you becoming a father has healed some of your childhood wounds with your upbringing?
100%. 100%. Um, I mean, without a doubt, it has been the thing that has healed those wounds because I have been able to put myself in my father's positions and my mom's position. Though my mom and I are, that's my best friend. My mom and I are road dogs. And now that I'm older, we talk like that. Even if we butt heads, even in this, there's so much love there that we know we're just iron sharpening iron. We don't, that's all it is. And that's how it should be, I think. That's how we all get better. But when it comes to my father and I, the hardest part about not necessarily having a relationship with my dad now is knowing I could help him. It's like, man, I went through everything you went through in half the time, and I did it. I'm doing it well.
Mhm.
My kids' moms are cordial. They can talk, they can plan things. My kids see each other. We all get together, when things are sweet. And it's just, I've been able, through even me still having my own life, my own career, my own dreams, I haven't put anything I want to do on the back burner, which is what a lot of people, I think they have to do to be good parents. When the sacrifice is already there, but once you begin to shrink and limit your life, you are doing that to your children as well. And I think that's something that our parents should have been taught. I feel
Mhm.
so bad my mom missed out on 20 years of her life, 20 years of what could have been her career then, and this is just my opinion, because let my mom tell it. She's living. Though she is, my mom is a rock star. She does so much. She's bi-coastal. She takes care of my grandparents. Then she's out here in LA with us, helping with us, seeing my kids. And then she's touring, she's overseas, shutting down arenas. It's like my mom is the epitome of what tenacity can do for you, what genuineness, compassion, kindness can do for you. Because it just gives you strength. And then the people around you will inevitably have some of that strength rub off on them. So that's what I do, and again, I wish so much my dad had the maturity to have the type of conversation with me that I think would genuinely heal those wounds for him and quickly too.
Right.
Um, but that's the other part of that is realizing that this life really is per individual, and that even our parents are humans outside of them being our parents as well. And sometimes it's hard for us as kids to accept that, and that's something else I've had to learn as well. It's like my dad is living his own life. He has his own path of growth he's on as well. And I have to respect that. I can have my own views and wishes of how he would handle things with my siblings and I, but that's just me as his son. Of course, it's a natural thing. But I have to accept that he is on his own path. And if he is in fact doing whatever it is that makes him happy right now in these later years of his life, I can only be upset from my point of view sometimes, but I can't really fault him for doing what he needs to do. And, people will say that takes a level of maturity on my part and all that. And it does. But at the same time, it's just me have already been in his shoes enough to relate to being like, man, I get it. I get it, man. Being a dad young is tough. Being married for 14 years is tough. If that's not really what you want to do, if that wasn't necessarily how you wanted to live your life, and then now having to probably grapple with all that time, it's got to be tough because I've gone through it in half the time. But I realized much quicker there's nothing like spending time with your children, man. There's nothing like being there for your kids and building those memories for them because it means so much. And that's really all that matters to me at this point in my life. And I'm so thankful that I haven't had to sacrifice much of myself to still be able to be the kind of dad I want to be. So there is a way, fellas. I promise. I'm here to help you. And for my women too, I want to be someone that y'all can talk to, that you can trust to give you the male perspective without it being combative, without it being finger pointing, or I think there's conversations like this that can be had that will help my peers who I see struggle with some things that I was fortunate enough to get through quickly, and come out on the other side happy. I'm pretty happy. Yeah.
There's so much that's coming up for me as I'm listening to you, and I think it's what you really said. It's so beautiful that you can look at your parents now and see them both as an entire human being, like us, who have wishes, wants, live up the life that they have left on them, and also as parents, and those two things can coexist in a way that you don't have to be upset at them all the time, and at the same time, I
Right.
think it's really oscillates. I feel like my parents sometimes, I'm like,
Yeah.
how dare you, how could you, and then I look at them and I'm like, oh, but if I think about your history, your
Yeah.
childhood, your parents, like, you didn't have that support. I think that's so
Right.
interesting and important to say, because we are now in a time, especially post pandemic, where mental health is having its golden hour, and everybody is
Yes.
looking for help and everybody needs help. And I've never seen so many therapists break out and become influencers, or whatever that
Exactly.
means. But I feel like that's
Yeah.
so important, because we're finally having these conversations and we're taking away so much shame. I think shame is
Yes.
so detrimental. And I love that you're saying, about being a young parent and about being
Yeah.
a young Black man parent. I think
Yeah.
America has such a historical perception of what that is.
Right.
And that's kind of what I want to bring, to you a little bit more, in depth of that discussion. How have you seen that role change as you were growing up and becoming now a father yourself?
It's something I've actually become quite passionate about, because I don't usually make a lot of things about race. Um, but with the stigma in the Black community when it comes to Black fathers, um, and now have gone through situations myself where I have been painted in a certain light just because of what society would say a quote unquote deadbeat dad is, or a quote unquote absent father. These things from the outside looking in on the situation with my oldest children, it's easy to say I'm just not there, or this and that, without ever asking me what my time looks like, what my sacrifices have looked like. I think there's just such a general lack of care and empathy for us when it comes to, a lot of us really want to be there. A lot of us would kill to have our children 24/7. And what I've begun to teach people, as I say, and I use myself as an example, you figure I'm doing this play. This is purely all 100% happening in real time. My schedule for the last month has been me working from 12:30 till 10 o'clock. So now I've got two older kids, both in school, both with their own schedules, with their mom who has a job, who has her own schedule as well. So then you add my 12-hour day to that, to where my only free time during that day to see them, I can't even see them. You know, that can seem like I don't want to be there, or I'm just not there on the outside. When it's like, no, I mean, there's so many variables that come into this co-parenting thing, even, that a lot of the time it sucks. It's unfortunate that the kids do get held in the balance a little bit, just naturally, and I've had to have these conversations with them recently to be like, Daddy is doing everything he can to put himself in a position to where I don't have to work anymore, and y'all can just
Mhm.
live with me or be with me whenever you want, and not have to worry about any of this. Never feel like daddy does not want to be here, or that daddy's choosing not to be here with you because I'm working. It has been a very touchy and a very it's been a learning curve experience as I become more successful, and as they get older, having to schedule time to see each other is the toughest thing. It's not, and not in any way the way I ever wanted to be a dad, and now really going through that stage of it is, I think, that next level of learning that I'm having to do, you know, because again, it comes back to the things we sacrifice. I could have not done this play, but then to imagine all the opportunities that I've gotten in this last just week and a half from doing the play will go to help the children, will help me buy this house. to the, it's just so I, as much as I feel bad about making the decision to do something great for the family as the leader of the household, which is what men are supposed to do, right? I know it's necessary to get us to the next stage, which is why I'm also as open and honest with them as I can be about how I feel, about why daddy works, about how daddy works. And it helps that daddy's not, I'm not nothing against 9 to 5 jobs or anything like that, but I have a really cool job. But it also stings as well because they still really they don't get to see the work I do because they're not with me every day either. So they really don't know how cool daddy is. They really don't get to see how hard I work and how I take care of my household, how I treat, my youngest one and her mom. Like it's a shame that they don't get to see these things naturally, but I know my end of the bargain as a co-parent and as their father in our particular situation is to just do whatever I can do to be there as often as I can and to make sure that they know that I love them, that I would literally kill for them, and that, I mean, my existence at this point is for them. So, I want to do everything I can also to begin to start the conversation publicly with everyone, to have a bit more empathy for us men folk sometimes, and to not lump us all into the same category of, well, he's just out here having a bunch of sex with a bunch of women, having a bunch of kids, and it's just out here wiling out. Not the case for all of us. Now, there are some people out there doing that. I am not negating them, and I'm also not making excuses for those men that do abandon their children, because I also believe there's a special place in HE double hockey sticks for people that abandon their children. I genuinely, in my heart, believe the karma that comes from turning your back on an innocent child is something that you don't want on your back. Gary, I promise you that. I've seen it up close. I know it's real. Which is, again, the other reason why I do every single thing I can in my power, man, to be there for my children, no matter what. And there are hardships, man. It's not an easy thing. But if you love being a parent, if you love your children, you'll do whatever it takes. So that's what I do, you know. But I really do believe I could be an incredible role model as a young black father, artist, entrepreneur, someone that has an incredibly income. I wear 20 hats every day, but I like to do that. I thrive in that. But it all stems from doing everything I can to make sure my kids want for nothing and don't have to experience any of the trauma that can
Mhm.
come naturally from a situation like ours, which just starts with communication and being as open and honest with them as possible. So, again, don't lie to your children, please, everyone out there. Stop sugarcoating things for them. They're smarter than you think. And at some point, there will come a time where you have to be honest with them, and you don't want to get there and it be such an enveloping thing for them that it then that in itself can be traumatic. You must start building that foundation with them early for them to be curious, for them to be aware, and to also have discernment with even the information that you give them, so that they can always have that question everything and thirst for knowledge that I think is what will separate this generation of kids from what happened with us and what happened with our parents. So that's what I'm here for, man.
And I love that honesty thing because I feel like as a child that I was once, there was a very sad moment in my childhood when I realized my parents were lying to me, whether
Hmm.
it be
Hmm.
about Santa or the Easter Bunny or whatever it is. And I have a couple of friends who are young parents of three daughters, and I had an opportunity to have a conversation with him, and what he said to me I thought was beautiful, and he was like, "I want my daughters to know that I am the pillar of their lives." So I exactly like you said, I will never lie to them. I would tell them the truth at the moment they ask me because I want them in their entirety of their lives to know that when something happens, they can come to me for the truth. And
Exactly.
I thought that that was really brilliant. And I really wish I've
Yeah.
had that. So again, as a non-parent, but as a previous child, I
Yeah.
can relate to that experience.
Yeah.
I did love what you said about men, and that maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I feel like there is a lot of disservice done not just to men, but I would say to baby boys and to
Yes.
young boys. I
Oh
think
yeah.
if we treat young boys differently, we will be raising different men. Um,
100%.
with the whole babies, boys don't cry, be tough, play with your
Yeah.
truck, like that kind of
Right.
stuff, that it's
Yeah.
so gender biased. And,
I agree.
really research has shown that our parents didn't know better, but we do know better.
We
Like
definitely do. Yeah.
yeah, we have had
Yeah.
plenty of psychological research, developmental research. There's been so much in the field of child development that has
Right.
shown that you don't leave babies crying. That really adds to them being an anxious like adult. You don't tell
Exactly.
boys don't cry because then we're raising sociopathic men and we're
Right.
wondering why they have no feelings. I'm like, well, because they
Exactly.
spent all their lives
Yeah.
told not to have
You've been
feelings.
told. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not sure we can fix anything at the latter stage of adulthood. I think there's hope. I believe in change, and there's hope for all of us if we really want to do the work and
Right.
investigate. But it really starts with this, with being a young, old, whatever father who really wants their kids to be full humans. Just
Exactly.
be a
A
human.
full human being. That is really what it is. I'm so glad you said that. A full human being, a well-rounded human being.
And I
That's
feel
that's
like
what I want for my kids.
we are also in a stage as adults where we were taught that, the way things were, like you said, men were the heads of households and they have to
Yeah.
provide. I mean, it comes from, like, my dad worked 12-hour days in an office every day to provide, and
Right.
the women
Right.
were expected to not work sometimes. Like, I married someone who did not want me to work and be a home, like, stay a home wife, and I thought that was interesting,
Hmm.
because obviously the moment I have a child, I would want to spend time with that kid, if
Right.
I'm doing
Right.
that. But at the same time, I'm like, I never came from a household that expected women to not work. My mom was
Right.
always like, go, be independent, have your own money, do something that you care about, on top of
Yeah.
being a parent. So it's interesting listening to your experience about having to negotiate, especially with your older kids as they're having a life of their own now and
Yeah.
after school activities and all that stuff that you are
Exactly.
told as a parent, your kids need to do that, your kids need this. So it's like, how do you know exactly the way to be a good parent?
Yeah. Right. Right.
It's
And I
confusing.
think, that's why knowing there's no playbook, knowing there's no manual for this, I genuinely believe, and the root and foundation of all my teachings on this is if you, as the parent, have a routine discipline every day to wake up and work on you, if you yourself, if it's in your nature to wake up and do the work to be a better person every day, a better communicator, a better listener, everything, chances are you're moving in the right direction. But if you aren't, if you are waking up every day with your children and they are experiencing you depressed, if they're experiencing you loathing and dwelling in your own self sorrow, chances are they're going to take on those attributes. You know, I'm not a natural sulker, or I don't do that. I don't sit around, I have my moments, but I don't sit and dwell on things. I'm so thankful and I'm so grateful, and I'm constantly showing gratitude just for being alive, for being able to do the things that I'm doing. I feel like I have had an incredibly well-rounded experience here already as a human with the things I've been blessed with. It's like, what could I really complain about at this
Mhm.
point? And that's also something I'm trying to instill in my children as well. You got to roll with the punches. That's life. There will be extreme highs and there will be extreme lows. If you can find yourself somewhere constantly vibrating and oscillating in the middle and just kind of observing and taking it all and using it all as fuel to become a better person, you'll naturally become a better person. And it's hard. It's easier. See, I don't even think it's harder to do. It really just takes a conscious decision to say, I don't want to wake up and feel like this anymore. And I know,
Right.
like you said, we know better now. There are tools. You can go to therapy. You can find what healing properties and what healing remedies and things work for you. But it takes that initiative. It takes dedicated action and discipline. Dedicated action, discipline. Dad, dedicated action, discipline. That's one of
Love that.
that's what it takes. So that's what I teach, man. And because the kids are always watching. They are always watching, whether you think it or not. They are picking up on every single one of your social cues, every single one. When it's the most interesting thing, especially with my 18-month-old, because she stays on my hip, like she's with me all day long. She's following me around, and it's just watching her already exhibiting the attributes of her mother and I it's just it's mind-boggling every day as we watch her grow and grow into her little first version of herself, which is an amalgamation of her mother and I. So that's why for her mom and I, it's like, well, we do kind of have to watch what we say. We have to watch even the kind of tones we take with each other, even if we're joking and playing around, because kids can't always discern when mommy and daddy are kidding, you know. Um, Certain conversations, certain things we watch. I mean, you really do have to be conscious of what your children are taking in, especially now with these phones and these constant screens. They're constantly, you really, if your sense of awareness is skewered, your kids ain't gonna have none. So you really have to dedicated action and discipline. That's really all it is. It can be simple thing, and it really is about finding what works for you. Again, society has kind of put this blanket over a lot of these things and have put everyone in. It's like some things don't work for everybody. Sometimes you got to find something that just works for you. But that takes work, man, and that takes an awareness of your own self and the maturity to be able to say, I need to work on these things. Um, and for me, children always brings me back to that. So if you don't have kids, I always tell people find some type of anchor for you that means enough for you to be a better person. It could be your mom and dad, it could be your parent, it could be your friends, it could be your job, it could whatever that is that brings you joy that you would like to continue to do. Use that as your means of a foundation of having that dedicated action and discipline. And then, you know, things will naturally start falling into your life. It really does work. Like I am a walking testament of that, I believe. Because this is what I practice every day, every single day. So use me as an example.
And self-awareness is so important. I love that you brought that up because I think a lot of it has to do with being able to really look within and self-analyze, which I think artists are maybe too good at, to a detriment. So as you're writing your music and you having this process of self-awareness, self-realizing, do you usually create your lyrics first, or do you create your sound first? Like, does there, or maybe it kind of flips and flops? I'm not sure. I don't write music,
Yeah.
so I'm always very curious about this process.
For me, it varies. It varies. Sometimes the words come first. Sometimes the melody comes first. Or sometimes, I'll go through phases where I'm just making beats, or I'm just, and then songs will come. Um, but for me, it's always happening. So I've always said I'm not. I think my process is I never stop. I'm constantly writing. I'm constantly making music. I'm constantly being mused. And the universe, God, whoever keeps channeling me with these great stories. More often than not, though, I guess I can say I do. The words definitely come. I am I am a lyric man. As much as I am a melody guy, the two go hand in hand with me without a doubt, and that's why I can write so many songs. I mean, most of the time, if you listen to my music, what you're hearing is what I wrote in the moment. I don't I proofread, I go back and I change words and stuff, but I've got this down so much now that I don't second guess myself really. I know how I like to write, I know what I like to say, and I know how I like things to be sung. So I just go. Um, it's been a long time, probably since I was in mm, my early 20s, that I had concepts in my head that I wanted to write about, and then I would write the songs. It's been a long time since I did that type of writing. For the last maybe 10 years, it's just been coming. I hadn't had to work at it. I hadn't had to really press the issue. I don't ever go into, even when I'm making my albums, there's usually not like a set theme or anything. What ends up happening is I'll go on these I'll go on these crazy runs. I'll record or write 30, 40, 50 songs back to back to back to back. And usually there's a common theme or there's a common thread within 10 or 12 of them that are really, really good and concise. And it's like, oh, well, there's an album, you know. And I know that's not a usual way that a lot of artists work. A lot of these people spend years trying to work on this really conceptual and concise body of work to make sure, it's I write so much and I'm a natural storyteller, and it usually does go and coincide with current events and where I'm at, that whatever I'm ingesting and learning at that time is going to come through in my writing. And it naturally somehow finds itself into being projects. And I get 2 or 3 albums out of those runs, as some people would only get maybe one. So that's
Right.
why I've been able to put out 10 or 12 albums in the last 3 or 4 years. And I have this vault of music now of how many ever thousand songs that I can pitch now. I wake up every day, that's all I do, pitch music, for TV and film. But I'm the guy that sends 40 or 50 songs off at once, and then it's like, well, they can just pick what they want, send me the money. But I'm very fortunate in the sense that, um, again, I don't second guess myself. A lot of the times that I'm in these writing sessions or with young artists or even older artists and producers and stuff, there's a lot of, I don't know about that, or that's not going to be right, or if this, I don't ever do anything like that. When a song comes to me, usually once that first line is written, it's done. And it amazes me every time. Anyone who's with me, especially my little one's mom, she's always surprised by me being surprised that I've written another jam, because as soon as I'm done, I'm like, did it, we got another one. And then another one, and it's like they know when I finish a song, because the other one, they just come back to back. I was telling my buddies from the play last night, actually, because they were asking me the same thing about writing. Songs harass me. Songs wake me up out of my sleep, and sometimes it'll just be a line, sometimes it'll just be a melody, but more often than not, if it's one that's really, really coming through, I'll write it right then. It'll come completely, because I was taught how to write songs as well. Like, I know song structure, I know how to get in and out of a chorus in 30 seconds. I can write you a full composed 3 verse outro hook song and keep it under 2 minutes. And that's not something everybody can do without it being, corny, without it being cookie cutter and bubblegum. It's like, no, I can give you real chords, real melodies, and a bridge, 2 minutes and 15 seconds. I don't need much of your time, but I'm going to give you something that, you know, is challenging for your ear more often than not, because, people really aren't making music like that anymore. And now that you got AI and all these other things, I think for a lot of artists and a lot of producers and a lot of songwriters, this technology and all of these things have kind of like intimidated them and have made it hard for people to write. Where for me, it's the exact opposite. I'm like, no, I'm trying to keep up with AI. I want to know if AI can keep up with me. So that has been even motivating as well, just because, again, it's my favorite thing to do. I I can't imagine doing anything else than making music. Like, I just can't. I think about it all the time. Like, what else could I have done? There's nothing on that list. I've been writing songs since first grade. Literally writing songs since first grade. Getting in trouble in class for writing songs since first grade. So I am a songwriter, man, and I love it. I really do.
I love this idea of songs harassing you.
Yeah.
There is a book by Elizabeth Gilbert that's called Big Magic. And in this book, she talks about the creative process and how ideas come and knock at your door, and
Oh
they
yeah.
knock just long enough. And if you don't take them up on it, they're going to move on to the next
They'll
person
move
and
on.
they're going
Oh
to
yeah.
knock on their door. And it's how she explained how people that never spoken in different parts of the world have been having same similar ideas of how to write a script or how to write a book or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and how
Mm-hmm.
to explain that. So I really love that you brought that up, and it kind of tied in with this. It really stuck with me, because
Yeah.
whenever I have an idea now, I'm like, oh my god, it's come to me. I have to like make it real. I have to like
Yeah. Of
materialize it before it goes on to somebody else. um, but thank you so much for being here today. And as we're wrapping up this
course.
episode, are there any last remarks for our audience members that are listening today?
Huh. Let me think. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad we got to do this. Honestly, this was a good talk. what I always like to leave people with is just be kind. Be kind, be generous. The cliche saying of you don't know what people are going through, try your best to be empathetic, especially in these times that we're in now where it seems like there's just an onslaught of tumultuous things and all this stuff to distract us and make us feel small. Look around. I urge everyone, next time you're in a public space, stop for a second, take a deep breath, look around, survey your surroundings, take a look at the people, and just try to feel the collective energy that we all have together. And I guarantee you, your level of empathy for your fellow human beings will rise exponentially. And in that moment, you'll realize A, you're not alone. And B, you are here to help other people. We are here to help each other, to be kind, and to show love to one another. Because again, the kids are always watching, man. And what we don't want is a bunch of empathetic, psychotic, and traumatic kids walking around here because who's going to take care of us? So that's it.
I am not going to add anything to it. All I'll say is to our listeners, take this challenge today or your next environment you walk into. Just do a look around and see how your body feels and how you connect to your environment. I know after this talk, that's what I'm going to do.
Awesome.
And I will report back.
Perfect.
Thank
Amazing.
you again for being here.
Thank you so much, really.